All right. Hello, and welcome to a special episode of Data Planet, where we are collaborating with Jenna Padilla, Chief Growth Officer at Goat Payments and co-host of the podcast Girls Just Want to Have Funds. Today's episode will be a little bit different, with an extra section at the end of the show where Jenna takes over the host mantle and asks me questions about digital marketing. We're very excited for this collaboration and happy to welcome Jenna to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to join the Data Planet family. This is very cool, and really appreciate you sharing some space on your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to have you on. Our conversations so far have been a lot of fun, so let's have another one.
Let's do it.
All right. So, before talking about goat payments, I'm hoping you can give me a little education on the world of payment processing. So, pretend for a second that I have no idea how payment processing works and who the merchant is and interchange rates and things like that. Can you just explain what merchants go through in order to actually accept payments from their customers?
Sure. So super simple in my world, right? We are assisting merchants. So any merchant or business, B2B, it doesn't matter what vertical they're in, they are going to need a way to process payments. And generally speaking, they'll Google some options for themselves, or maybe even a local business, or what we would call an independent sales organization. And they would turn to them for advisory services, or go online and use someone like a Square or, a Stripe in order to help them facilitate a tech stack. And you would go through an underwriting process by which you would then start processing with a bank or a processor direct, or through a independent reseller. And in the scheme of that, what you are generally speaking is you're paying your rate, which includes interchange. You've got to pay the card brands, and then obviously on top of that, you're paying additional rates for the services or tech stack that you're using, and that could be monthly. It could be a one-time fee, and anywhere in between that, you've got a point of sale that you're using, maybe a mobile device. And so, the advantages of working with independent sales organizations who are really geared and focused on helping them and guide them through selecting those different tech stacks and ways to process are really the key differentiator, versus just going online, picking out a price, picking out a standard way to do business, and then functioning that way. Your service model is really an email. And so, the area of payments that I work in is really, focused and geared on resellers, SaaS, and working direct with merchants, and really providing them kind of that high value, high service support where it's more advisory and guidance up front. So that way you're matching and consistently, finding the tech stacks that are dependent and based exactly how they're doing business, not a universal tech stack. So it's really important, I think, for us in payments that we focus on merchants that are looking for that individual experience,
Hmm.
and really that high touch experience, because it really could be the difference between them scaling and being stuck, and not selling as many goods, or being even capped on their volume.
So, um, Jenna, one thing that I didn't know before talking to you is that that whole process that these merchants go through and getting all that payment infrastructure set up is not something that everybody gets approved for. Like there are challenges along the way that might mean you can't do that. You might get stuck, whether that's stuck beyond a certain volume or even getting started. And so what do those challenges actually look like? And how does Goat Payments help merchants who are running into those challenges?
Yeah, so deliberately, we've built an apparatus of over 35 different banks, processors, paid facs, specialized vendors, and a specialized vertical would be, for instance, cannabis or dispensary. And those are really our lead differentiators and what we lead with. So we match merchants based on their best approval options and the exact business type that they are. So as opposed to dropping them all into one bank option, that particular bank may not understand their business. And so the underwriting process can be arduous, it could be lengthy, and there could be no path to an approval. And so, where we lead in that is again on the advisory and guidance to procure, package, and really lead them through the underwriting component of it. So that way it's smooth, efficient, and we're matching the exact bank based on how they're doing business.
Gotcha. So someone in one of those markets, they may have, a friend in business in a totally different vertical. Hey, what did you do for your payment processing? They try and go through the same process and they get denied because, well, that's a different business. The bank doesn't that bank doesn't know how to handle that or doesn't want
Right,
to handle
right.
that. And so you help in that matchmaking process as well as designing the combinations of tools and partners that are going to help that business succeed.
Right, and that's a really good way of putting it. It really is a matchmaking and being really deliberate and intentional about how that business, is prepared to do business today, how they
Mhm.
are prepared to accept payment methods, what their volume is, how they plan on growing, what their products are. So we do a lot of due diligence up front as opposed to just sending them an application and throwing it to a bank and let's just all, pray that that gets approved. We like to do more of the upfront due diligence. That way, we are preparing an underwriting package that speaks to the bank and helps them understand exactly how that merchant's processing. Full disclosure, all due diligence done up front. We do a really good job at that.
Nice, nice. And so you brought up dispensaries and cannabis as an example of one vertical that may run into these kinds of challenges. What are some of the other niche markets that you operate in?
Yeah, so anything from travel, future delivery, CBD, nutraceuticals, coaching, a lot of these particular verticals, they get challenged by going through anywhere from Stripe or Square may not approve that particular business type. And so our particular sweet spot is really those merchants that need that high touch guidance up front, and that
Mhm.
could be anywhere from additional volume to maybe a different type of gateway or tech stack, or they need additional payment methods. Generally, when they come to us, they're already in trouble. Their funds have been held, their volume's been capped. And so, from that point of view, we're not solutioning a whole lot. They've already come to us with a problem. But
Yeah.
what we have been focused on, really, especially with resellers and SaaS groups, which you're familiar with as well, um, is focused on helping them prepare and get ahead of that, so that way they already have a good solution ready to go as soon as they have an opportunity or a prospect or maybe even a merchant in their portfolio that's been shut down or terminated.
Got you. Okay. So just to spell that out a little bit more. So there's some subset of your customers who are direct customers. They're merchants that you're providing these services to. And then you have this sort of secondary market. So it's people who also serve those merchants and they're connected in some other part of that process and finding I have this client or customer on my side who's running into this issue and you help them support their customer or are
Right.
you giving them solutions to provide to their customer? Can you talk a little more about what that looks like?
Yeah, so, we streamline a lot of this process for our partnerships, and we do focus a good portion of our business is focused on resellers that essentially drop GOAT as a resource for them. Also, on the sales side, we found that in our past experience working in corporate payments, there was always a gap in helping resellers from a sales perspective. And so they knew how to sell, but advisory and guidance on these specific verticals began to get really complicated for them, and they generally relied on their processor to help them, and that's very limited resources. And quite frankly, even speaking for myself, they rarely sold merchant processing themselves. They were really in a relationship management job. So you're moving communication between underwriting and risk and compliance, but you're not really truly understanding what you're telling the reseller to do or to get or to comply with. So we essentially built GOAT with an apparatus to really help solve for that by providing a sales team that also is dedicated to our resellers. And so it takes a wider approach as to servicing our resellers in a different way that our competitors aren't, which is simply providing the apparatus to get approved, not essentially all those small things in between that really make the big difference for the merchant experience.
Nice, and I mean, what a smart move too, because if those those businesses are already talking to your customers and already involved in that solution, then, you know, you're right there. You're right there with a huge
Right,
customer base
right.
already established with people who understand what you're talking about and the value you add. They're seeing those examples in different ways that can play out. So, really interesting go-to-market
Yeah, yeah.
strategy.
There's so many levels to the world of payments in terms of how many groups can be involved in servicing merchants. And I think where our place is at is really in providing both merchants, but really resellers, partners, SaaS companies, that one-on-one high touch service. So that way they get a better chance at closing those opportunities when they're hot, as opposed to them going out and trying to hunt for 10 different banks that may or may not approve that merchant account. We've already built this entire network and we have very good relationships with all of these banks. And so I think that really is a value add to our resellers. They essentially get the advantage of our expertise, our relationships, and also our sales team, which is really big. I mean, at the end of the day, you're trying to efficiently help that merchant cross the line of, what are the services that they need, or quite frankly, just an approval. And so our team is really, focused on the advisory side of payments as opposed to just offering intake, onboarding, and let's hope it gets approved.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I mean, it can be scary if you don't know what you're doing. That's your whole business. So yeah, I imagine that advisory piece is very valuable and very welcome, especially if someone is about to commit to a new system or, you know,
Right, right.
putting all their eggs in some basket, hoping that solves the problem that's keeping them from staying in business or growing their
Right.
business.
Which is great too, and we've solved for the experience of anyone having to feel like they have to learn 30 different bank processes. We have a universal process. So to the upfront user, it's a universal process. To us in the background, we have our own internal CRMs that are API'd into all of our different processors. So the experience to the merchant and the reseller is pretty frictionless and seamless. Meanwhile, in the background, you've got a lot of people doing a lot of smart things, much
Yep.
like what you guys do,
Yep.
that are managing all these different components that could really get a reseller stuck, and thus also, it cools down the opportunity quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. And so with that network you built, I want to clarify the benefit of that. It isn't that like we have friends, so they'll just kind of push something through. It's like we can speak their language. We know who's going to be a fit. We can help accelerate that process because we already know they're going to want this, and like it's just about streamlining that process, not about like trying to create high risk situations for people. It's just, hey, there's a legit business there and there's someone
Mhm.
here who's a good fit. It's that, again, going back to that matchmaking.
Right, and I think what's really important is that at GOAT, we've already built that framework, and that
Hmm.
framework can be very expensive to, one independent reseller who is trying to build that framework for themselves. Although there's easy ways to do that 35 different times can be a pretty difficult process. It requires a lot of resources, and quite frankly, just like in any other industry, having trusted relationships that you have worked with for decades, I think really helps. It certainly helps at GOAT in terms of, the value adds that we offer our resellers. But like I said, we get a good mix of partnerships, some that already come to us because they're in trouble. There's a merchant or group of merchants that have a need right away. And in those cases, those are prioritized to us because they're immediate opportunities. And then the other segment is going out and really educating our market of resellers to be prepared, so that you're not having to run around and put out fires later.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And here are some warning signs maybe to get ahead of so that you can be your hero, your customer's hero, your merchant's hero before they have to go through all that pain. So,
Right. And I think in any business, just having intentional partnerships dedicated to an expertise of certain lanes, I think can really be the difference for your business in terms of, where you're confident onboarding your merchants. Because at the end of the day, what really has become evident to me because I put myself into the goat apparatus itself is I started going out and selling merchants myself. For 2 decades, I've been working with resellers and never sold a merchant myself. And the GOAT C-level was like, "Why don't you go out and try it?" And I said, "You know what?
You're like,
That's a good
how
idea."
hard could it be?
Yeah, right? Like, I've been asking these partners for 2 decades, "Oh, it's so easy. Go do this,
Yeah.
sell this. It's a tech stack. It's pricing." And I put myself through the process, and I can tell you without a doubt the amount of empathy I have now working with partners is completely different.
Yeah.
But I do think the experience has really helped me to speak in a different way to my partners than it had been before, and that's a good thing. Salespeople, I think business development in general, I think we get stuck in selling the same way every single time and don't really feel comfortable navigating or pivoting quickly. And I think it's a really good thing for salespeople to get uncomfortable and kind of work through that process.
Yeah.
And last year was that for me, but this year I can really see the fruits of those experiences already playing out with resellers and how I've been working with everybody and speaking with our resellers.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what you're excited about for this year and how that experience last year is playing into what you're focused on for 2026?
Yeah, so obviously, our podcast has been a really new thing for myself and some of the other ladies that I'm involved with that on. It's a very uncomfortable spot because I normally am not one to be in front of the camera. I'm really on the business development side on the back end.
All right, so you were talking about your experiment in 2025, getting involved directly, trying out selling to merchants, and the empathy that that gave you in, being in those direct sales shoes, and how that is changing your approach in 2026. So, can you talk a little bit about what you're excited about for 2026 and how that relates to your experience from 2025?
Yeah, so at Goat, there's several things going on. We are growing our network of banks. We are increasing our CRM capabilities, which I know you guys are also doing really big. And obviously AI is the big buzzword, and so using a GPT is really big for us and kind of navigating things, making it more efficient. We continue to really focus on the growth and the high value products that we're offering to our partners. For me personally, the between the podcast of Girls Just Want to Have Funs and, working with new partners, I think the value adds are increasing. Customers and resellers and SaaS companies are expecting more out of the gate. And it's important to do that because merchants are changing how they're processing payment methods, et cetera. And so we want to make sure that we're staying ahead of the trends and I think that 2026 is going to be really exciting for us in terms of intentional business and really expanding our framework of clients that we're working with.
Nice. Awesome. Well, you've mentioned Girls Just Want to Have Funs, which is the show that you co-host. Why don't you introduce the show and let's switch gears over to to a Girls Just Want to Have Fun stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
So I first want to thank you for sharing the podcast space again and doing this kind of mashup with the Girls Just Want to Have Fun's podcast. Personally, I think it really shows your personal and professional character. Immediately you were supportive of this, and it's really focused on females in tech. And I was really impressed with your decision making at the time when we were talking about this.
Oh,
And
thanks, Jenna.
I found it very telling of the type of organization that you run. So, taking action, peeling back the opportunity and being really intentional about, people that you want to work with and talk about your value add. So I want to thank you for that personally.
Of course. Yeah, this
Okay.
is a blast.
Okay, ready? Let's warm up. You
I'm
ready?
ready.
Okay.
Ready.
If paid digital marketing as a business segment was a genre of a movie, what would that be? Would it be a thriller, a comedy, a fantasy, a horror?
Gosh. I think it would be like a dark comedy. And I don't know if that's just because I like dark comedies, but it would be one of those like analytical, cutting, sometimes it's devastating, sometimes it's hilarious, like that nice mix of things. Like
Love it.
one of my favorite movies is Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and that like, ooh, this is kind of a dark story, but it's also a little bit goofy at times. I think that's digital marketing
Fantastic.
done
Okay.
right. That's digital marketing
Yeah,
done right. Yeah.
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 Okay, so we're warmed up. Let's kind
Yeah.
of dive into a personal question now, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so women CEOs in paid media space, from the research I did, tend to hover around 15 to 30% representation. From your point of view, what does it take to lead at the level you are? And what could other women benefit knowing ahead of time that you've learned that you'd be willing to share?
So I think the number one thing for me is having a good team and a good teammate. So my COO, Courtney Colleran, and I run the show together. We have a very supportive board who, they're the co-founders of the company. I think that they could have not placed this bet on us to be able to grow their business and, be able to win for them. But um, yeah, I think they were very smart in choosing Courtney and I to run things together because we just balance each other out really well. There are really, really tough days. And I think uh, imagining trying to do this alone, it's not fun. It's like, it has to be fun. It has to fit into your life. I think that's when we first got started, Courtney and I had agreed together. We're only going to do this if this works for our lives. We're not going to burn ourselves out on something, just chasing some like finite ultimate. And like, this is a marathon. We're going to pace ourselves out and we're going to have a good time and try to work together on that. Um, I think as a woman leader in business, there is a level of acceptance that I sometimes have a hard time with that just like you're not going to be for everybody. I don't think that's just women in business, but there are some people who, I've had clients who clearly treat me differently than if I was a man in the same position, even, not being sure what to refer to myself or my team at like, "Oh, you, ladies?" Like, yeah, why is that a question mark? Like, I don't understand what so, yeah, just knowing, okay, I can't be all things to all people. I'm not going to try and conform to some other expectation of what a leader should be, whether that's a gender specific thing or not. Um, I think just staying authentic means you spend way less time and energy trying to project something rather than just live your truth, surround yourself with good people, be realistic about your weaknesses and where you could use support, and then try and find ways to support that.
I think a lot of people spend way too much time trying to be interesting and not interested. And I think that can make all the difference in your own experience, whether it's business or life.
Yeah.
But I definitely can understand where you're coming from. There sometimes is a power struggle of just how authentic you need to be. Are you being? And in business, I think it's really important to have a tribe that is supportive of the goal and everyone rowing together. Although it is also good for one person to stop rowing and ask a question every once in a
Yep.
while.
Yep,
Are we
for sure.
rowing in the right direction? But
Yep.
but I think that was a great answer and very honest answer. So
Thanks.
so thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so now a question about Working Planet. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Let's spend a little bit of time on the organization. So I personally, and we talked about this, I personally had over a year relationship with a digital marketing group before meeting you. And I found that I produced more lead gen than, than they did. I don't think that I asked, in all fairness, I don't think I asked the right questions up front. I also didn't know exactly what I was getting into, and maybe I didn't see the red flags of what could have helped me get ahead of some of the decisioning on
Mhm.
where to spend.
Mhm.
Um, would there be a short checklist of questions, or asks in digital marketing firms that I should have maybe shortlisted a couple of questions, when it comes to ad spend, because that can spiral into a situation where the customer could get really frustrated. There's got to be there's got to be some guidance up front you could offer in helping with that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, specifically getting started with a new firm? Yeah, so, um, red flags, checklist items. So, I would say the first thing is, as the person hiring someone else to help you with digital marketing, don't go into that with a, like, I don't know, there's something that's supposed to happen with digital marketing, but go in with, like, "This is what I want to get out of this. Can you do that?" Like, not I want some I wanna go viral, like, that's not a marketing goal, or, like, I wanna
Right.
increase traffic to my website. Some people are happy with that, but really, if what you want is, like, I want increased sales, and I wanna be confident in where those sales came from so that I know if I'm spending the right amount on
Mhm.
different channels, if I'm spending the right amount on this relationship overall, like, I wanna know what my actual return on investment is, and I wanna understand where you got that number. Can you help me with that? And what I've found in talking with folks in marketing is they might say yes and then say, like, absolutely, we'll report back to you on your lead volume and your cost per lead. And, like, that's not what I asked. What I said I wanted was this increase in sales and revenue. And I want your help understanding, did you help me with that? Or, like, what's getting in the way? Can you be honest with me about what's working and what isn't? And honestly, like, digital marketing is it's a process of trying things, measuring things, those things not working, or, like, gone are the days of, like, "Ooh, I'll just turn on this one channel and that's gonna be my saving grace." It's like
Right,
everything
right.
requires trying things, optimizing things, and building that mix, but you have to do that methodically. Otherwise, you're gonna wind up with this, like, big stew of stuff, and you're like, "Maybe some of this worked and maybe some of it didn't, but no one really seems to know." So now I'm afraid to stop because what if it's working? But I'm
Right.
afraid to expand because what if it's not working? And you just get, like, stuck in this limbo. So figure out what you actually care about, and if it's not marketing metrics, that's probably good. And then make sure that whoever you're talking to can talk to you about those results, and they don't try to keep steering the conversation back to some higher funnel activity or some other metric. Um,
And that's what happened to me. I got steered into a new product or service. And you're right. I think it does take time. I personally, I mean, I'm in business development. I realize sometimes you got to put the effort into kind of going through some of the pain to find out some results, much like
mhm.
working out or going in the gym. There's a little pain involved to get some results. And so I stuck through it, but I found when I did have questions, I was just pivoted to another service and I didn't really get the feedback outside of maybe my data wasn't great. Like,
Yeah.
I can't tell you any feedback from that experience where I could essentially give someone else a checklist of red flags because I got, kinda put in the soup myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, the fact that you're talking about it as being sold a service, that is a red flag, as opposed
Perfect.
to, like, "Here's what I'm working with. Can you use this to help me
Right.
grow?" Like, I think, I don't know if the things they were selling were like, "Well, here's an additional offering we have," or if they were recommending updates to your tech stack or any of those things, but, um one of my going back to movies, one of my favorite movie scenes of all time is in Apollo 13 when they're trying to figure out how to filter the carbon dioxide out of the air, and they're like, "Okay, we have this duct tape in this tube in this box, and you need to figure that out." And that's like that's the approach that I like. Every company is different.
Mhm.
Come to me and tell me, "What are you working with and what are you trying to do?" And we'll be honest with you about, like, do we think that's gonna work? Are we gonna be able to do that? Maybe someone could, it's not us. But where we feel like, "Okay, I know just where I would start here, and I know just what we're gonna see if it's working and what we're gonna see if it's not working," and, like, my job is not to hold on to you as a client for as long as possible and get you to spend as much as possible with me. My job is to be a partner to you and help you understand what's going on better through, like, it's an honest exploration
Mhm.
for us too. We're also trying to understand what's working for you.
So quick question. I hear this all the time, especially in the digital marketing space. So One, is data still king, or can a client still be able to find financial gains and lead gen with very limited data?
Um, Data is still king. However, data-driven marketing is not nearly as meaningful as it used to be. So you want to have data because in order to know what's working, at least with my company's approach to marketing, we want to be able to see, okay, are you generating leads? Where are those leads coming from? How are they moving through the funnel? We want to be able to see historically also, especially if you have some significant latency in your sales cycle, we want to see historically how long did it take for leads to go from, MQL to SQL or to opportunity so that we can make decisions in real time around what's the real-time data we see. We also don't wanna run these, like, 6-month flights where it's like, "All right, we launched and now we wait for
Right.
6 months." It's like, "No, no, no, like, what can we know now based off of what we're tracking?" So, um, I think data is still king in digital marketing, but it has to be the right data.
Mhm.
You can drown in data anywhere, but in digital marketing in particular, you can spend a fortune on different tools. You can get all pumped about things like Google Analytics or, Salesforce or all sorts of tools. But if you're not collecting the right things or using them effectively, you're just looking at a ton of numbers and getting more and more anxious about the fact that, like, oh no, maybe I don't know how marketing works or like,
Right,
is
right.
this what I'm supposed to be doing? And it can get very easily separated from the actual goals of the business and into like, well, this is marketing. Don't worry about that. This is what success looks like. It has to be aligned with where you're going as a business.
Right,
So,
right.
actual sales data, yes, that is
Okay.
still really important.
Which I think most financial or fintech companies, they do have that. I think, is the data right? Have they really reviewed that data? I think that's a different story. Um, but secondary to that, I know that Working Plan has been using external AI, but you're also building your own internal GPT systems that are
Mhm,
customized.
mhm.
In doing that, do you think that's really changed the optics of your data? And are you seeing different trends and pathways from your internal GPT that lead to conversion differently versus using the standard off the shelf AI tools available?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So, there are 2 main sort of AI focuses right now at Working Planet. So, one is using AI-based optimization effectively. So speaking well to the optimization engines that are on the back end of the ad networks. So understanding what signals do they need to succeed, which is not just give them the clearest, most complete data. In some cases, we actually kind of want to give them fake data that gives them clearer signals because maybe the data is a little too nuanced depending on the platform and how mature it is. So that's one focus is the sort of how do we use this data effectively to get the networks to give us the results we want? Then there's our own GPTs internally, which we have yet to find an AI tool that can be super helpful on the analysis front. So at Working Planet, we're mostly like math and science nerds who then do marketing stuff. So the GPTs are helpful for us in things that are more along the lines of like ideation and organizing information and even we've cut way back on the amount of Slack messages going back and forth around like, "Hey, I'm writing an email to a client. How do you think this sounds?" And like just like use ChatGPT to, it's too many words. Just cut it down. Like
Right.
those sorts of things. So any processes where we found like competitor research is one where we built a
Hmm.
custom GPT where it's like this is just kind of a slog and you have to just sit there and go through this process. Let's speed that up so that we can spend more time on the analysis piece. If it's organizing information, I'd say more operational improvements. That's really what we're focusing on the GPT front. Um, but just because as we've tried testing different tools and they can't really pick up the nuance of what we do
Hmm.
in our analysis yet.
Which is really cool. I think it speaks a lot to Working Planet and kind of what you guys are geared to, which is creating a more efficient process at Working Planet internally, so that way you could really spend most of your resources, working with the clients that are working with you guys. And I think you guys communicate a great way of, being transparent upfront about where the synergies and maybe even where the questions that the customers or clients are not asking. You guys seem to do a really good job in asking those questions for them, which, as someone that has been through the process, I feel like I could have benefited from
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But thank you for that. Again, Emma, thank you very much. What's the best way to get a hold of Working Planet?
Yeah, so my information will be in the show notes. You can also go to workingplanet.com or find me on LinkedIn. I'm Emma Davis on LinkedIn. Um, Jenna and Goat Payments, your information will be in our show notes, but is there anywhere else
Awesome.
that people should look for you or look for girls just want to have funds?
Yeah, Instagram, LinkedIn, Spotify, we're all over the place. But more so, I want to thank you for being a friend. The Girls Just Want to Have Fun's podcast. This was a lot of fun, this mashup, and again, I'm just so graciously thankful for you to be really open to the mashup.
Of course, it was a super fun idea. I'm glad you brought it up and it's been a blast. So thank you so much, Jenna. And to our listeners, we'll talk at you next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.